Good afternoon, and if you're just now joining us, welcome to the Johns Hopkins SAIS Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Policy Panel. For those of all of you who stayed on from the previous panel, welcome back. My name is Chloe Richardson, and I'm a first-year master's student, and I'm this year's BSU president. I'm joined by the amazing Dugokulu. He serves as our vice president, and he'll be moderating this afternoon. We're incredibly honored to be celebrating Black History Month with you all and this amazing panel that we have today. So let's get started. We have Ms. Constance Morris-Hope, Ms. Pamela Hill, and Ms. Deborah Nixon. Very briefly, I'll give you some background on each of them. So Ms. Nixon is the president of the Prince George's County, Maryland chapter of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women. She spent her career advocating for civil rights and social justice, where she most notably works as an advisor at the late Leon Sullivan's African American Summit. We also have Ms. Hill. She's currently the managing director of the Energy Horizon. She's a notable alumna of Johns Hopkins SAIS and a valuable member of our community. Her expertise is in the area of global finance and risk management, and she's also worked in the CARICOM region, so be sure to ask some questions about that. And we also have Ms. Hope Morris, my apology. She's a certified executive coach, facilitator, and trainer specializing in leadership and in organizational development. She owns her own company, Carpais Coaching, and she's also a fantastic SAIS alumna. So we're very excited to have everyone here today. Again, this event was graciously supported by the Johns Hopkins Alumni Association and the SAIS Innovation Fund. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Dugokulu, and I'll see you at the end.
Thank you, Chloe, and thank you to our guests, and thank you to the attendees for making it today. So I'll be hosting and moderating today. I'll start with an icebreaker, and maybe we'll go by alphabetical order. How does it feel to be a Black woman today in 2022? Maybe Ms. Pamela Hill?
Very sorry about that. Always nice to unmute rather than have everyone try to read my lips. Yes, thank you so much, Dugokulu, for the question. In 2022, I'd say being a Black woman is a combination of hope, fear, exhilaration, I will say, although caution, as you can also hear in the way that I say the exhilaration. So certainly, we'll just pick a round number. 100 years ago, I can imagine that being a Black woman would have been heavy on the fear side, not so much on the hope and exhilaration front. Now, here we are today. There is more reason to celebrate, absolutely, without question. But there's still the shackles of fear, uncertainty, concern.
Thank you. Ms. Constance Morris-Hope?
Thank you very much. I agree with everything that Ms. Hill has said, and I have come a long way in my many years of education and work, and as a Black woman, I think that how should I put it? It is exhilarating to know that you can do all the things that I have done, and I hope to share that power that I feel with my daughter and my grandchildren, and my granddaughter in particular, because you also feel powerful. We have accomplished a lot over the many years, and I think that we just have to keep going, and that's how I feel.
Thank you very much. Is Deborah Nixon? I think you're muted. Sorry.
Well, I truly don't want you trying to read my lips. How does it feel to be a Black woman in the 20th century? It feels powerful. It feels like continuous work. I remember Congresswoman Barbara Jordan, saying that for a long time she thought that George Washington and Alexander Hamilton had just forgotten her. But through the process of amendments, through the process of interpretation in court decisions, she's now included in We the People. And as a starting point, that basic sense of my right to be, it's sort of like Harriet Tubman said, she had two thoughts in mind and two things that she knew. She knew she had a right to death and she had a right to liberty. And democracy is a work in progress and worthy of being protected. And as a Black woman, I do see the intersection between civil rights and human rights, Black women's rights and Black men's rights. And it has been Black women that have been at the vanguard of positive, constructive change. And I think that's because wisdom is a she.
Thank you very much. As you all said, it's really exhilarating being in these positions, even with all the struggle and the hardship. How has your experience as Black person, as Black women, shaped your path to success? Maybe let's go in the same order.
Thanks very much, Dubakolo. So regarding how both my sex and my race has shaped my path, and as part of that, my path to success, one is certainly an awareness. I am. It's funny. Your eyes, of course, cannot turn this way. So within yourself, you just are. But then you realize yourself immediately through how others view you. So I never forget that I'm a Black woman. And certainly I'd have to say probably Black first, woman second in this society. And in terms of success, I wear it as a grateful and thankful obligation. I wear it that way, as an obligation to do good, to role model good, and to outstretch hand for others and their path.
Thank you. Ms. Morris-Hope.
Yes, thank you again. And again, Pamela and I must be on the very same wavelength, because I'm agreeing with everything she said. But my story is a little bit different in that I was born and grew up in Liberia. So I'm Liberian, and I'm an American citizen now. My mother was an American by birth. She became a Liberian citizen. My dad was Liberian. And so I grew up going back and forth between Liberia and the United States. My father was a businessman, but also a diplomat, in that he was on the Liberian delegation to the UN. So we spent a lot of time in New York. So the issue of race did not come up for me in Liberia. I mean, I was who I was. And when I came to the United States, I went to an all-white boarding school. The issue of race came up, and I navigated that pretty well. And then Bard College, and then SAIS, and then Bologna, Italy, where I did the first year of SAIS. I'm saying all that to say that the idea of race came gradually to me, and I have navigated the various spaces. When I graduated from SAIS, I went to the World Bank, which was an international atmosphere. And then I was on the faculty at the University of the District of Columbia, which was, again, predominantly Black, I would say. And so my experience has been okay. I haven't had to fight, too much to get to where I am. And so I tried, that's where the power comes in. I feel that I have done all of these things and have accumulated some power as a Black woman that I'm trying to share with other people that I coach. I coach, Black young people, older people, trying to, navigate the spaces that they're in. So yeah, that's my story.
Thank you very much. Ms. Nixon?
How has being a Black woman, be Black and a woman, impacted my success? I would have to say that it has been the woman side of my experience that I have had the most negative rebound from, as opposed to even my Blackness. Working in an arena that was trying to pride itself on being just and equitable I work with the National Education Association family. I mean, a great set of organizations in varied states. And they had problems, they had issues that needed to be addressed. And I think that the woman side, when it came to going into management experiences, that's where the woman side was negatively received. It was more, it's sort of, we make these decisions, and if I would say something and make a suggestion that was a solution, about three rounds later, when a white person would say it, it became, oh, worthy of being heard. And I can remember being in North Carolina at a staff meeting, and that particular day, it was like, I am sick of this, because I had noticed that it was not just Black people speaking where that occurred, but primarily the women in the room when that occurred. And because of the importance of the relationships that we had collectively as a staff, that particular day, I took the opportunity to stop and say, now, wait a minute. When I said XYZ about 6 minutes ago, it was as if you couldn't hear it until there are two white men that say this, or till the men say this. And I've noticed that happens not just to me as a Black woman, because at that point there were only three Black people on the staff, 2 Black ladies and a Black gentleman. And before I left, I had groomed 5 and had 5 UNICEF directors that were positioned around the country, fortunately, thank you, Lord. But it took taking the opportunity to have a teachable moment, because it was important to the relationship between the people in that room, that we respected one another, not just as men or not just as women, but as people, that we respected each other. And the gentleman stopped, and several of them in the room acknowledged, yeah, that is happening. Yeah, we do need to work on this. So from that perspective, I say that. And then I want to share this. This is a poem that covers your question. It's called True Soul. Soul. The true soul is the self you see, the one your mind's eye wants to be. Your soul in life could be in the midst of tragedy if you allow the they to decide who you will be. Muster your mind for your soul's sanctity, the omnipotent space that allows you to simply be the essence of your destiny, unbridled by the patronizing agony, the agony of they who never see the boundless vision for your destiny. When your soul meets this convoluted epiphany, may your attitude of constant faith and gratitude dispel their limiting platitudes. Now, that's one of my poems. And at the essence, it seeks to address the importance of one knowing who you are, what you value, and that other people do not define who you are. Because by virtue of God's destiny, He made each of us unique and special with purpose. And we have to own the fact of our perfection in God's light, and nobody else takes that away from us or defines it for us.
Thank you. This is a great segue into my next question. So how do you navigate white spaces without othering your allies and othering yourself and not compromising either? Ms. Hale?
You're giving us all the easy ones today, aren't you? Yeah, no, this is good stuff. Okay, so how to navigate those white spaces without othering neither yourself nor your allies. I suppose one way that I seek to do it is, although I do operate in this world, Black first, woman second, and often, tightly integrated as just equal. I also remember that actually fundamentally I'm human first, as are all those around me. So I try to carry that lens in order to engage others and to prevent myself from falling into too insular a web, a way of being and seeing. And I also seek to engage others, and often just by helping them to cross the divide that they might see around Blackness and don't want to acknowledge it. So for instance, if I'm, just a couple of days ago, I was talking with someone about community development and the need for housing justice, and mentioned that that was particularly important to me as a Black woman, because many of the folks who find themselves on the other end of needing that justice are Black women with children. So I will say that in an audience of mixed company, as it were, in other words, white men, white women, so that they too can feel permissioned to see it that way and say it that way. So that's one way that I navigate.
Thank you. Ms. Marisol?
Yes, actually, I want to build on what Deborah Nixon just said, because I really do appreciate your poem. It was beautiful, and it's exactly what I was going to say, not as beautifully as you, that the sense of self is so, so important when you're in these spaces where you might be different. Knowing who you are, what your values are, what's important to you, I think is really critical, because with this sense of self, you can be, who you are. And my parents instilled that in me when I was growing up, that I could be anything I wanted to be. I could do anything I wanted to do, and I've taken that with me all along. So whatever space I'm in, that's my attitude. When I went to the all-white boarding school in Philadelphia, when I came to the United States, when I got to Bard, when I got to SAIS, nothing has changed since then. I am now living in St. Michael's, Maryland, on the eastern shore of Maryland. And this little town is, for all intents and purposes, a segregated town. I live on the white side of town, and it's okay. So far it's okay, and I don't expect that to change. But what I have found is that by talking to people and by engaging them in treating them as humans, and they treating me as humans, we're doing fine. I'm a gardener. I have an open garden. So in spring and summertime, people come into my garden just to walk around and take a look. They're welcome. When I walk out the door to greet them, many of them are surprised to see me coming out of the door, and sometimes they probably assume I'm the help. But I'm not. I'm the owner of the house and of the garden. But what I found because we have many tourists coming to St. Michael's. It's a tourist destination, and there are people from all over the world coming through. And what I found, thanks to my education at SAIS, being in Bologna and at the World Bank, I can identify with these people from all over the world. I've either been to their country, and I can talk about that, or I can greet them in their language. Thank goodness. If it's French, if it's Spanish, if it's Russian, I can do that. And Pam can introduce them, greet them in Chinese. I can say one or two words. But the point is, if you can establish this bond with people, I think is a way to navigate those spaces and come out in a very positive way. That's what I'm hoping. That's what I hope to convey when I do my coaching. And the training and facilitating that I do all around the world. I've worked and lived, studied, and traveled in 61 countries. And that has helped me to build these bonds and navigate these spaces. And so I think the more young people of color, and my daughter is actually the director of the Ralph Bunche Center at Howard University, and she is pushing study abroad, got to build these bridges with people who are different, whatever that difference is. And that's how I navigate these spaces, by building these bonds with whatever tool I have in the moment.
Thank you. Ms. Nixon Jordan.
Hi, I really appreciate my colleagues here on the panel's comments, because I mean, they're right on point. Life is about relationships. And in navigating my Blackness as a woman and working in progressively more responsible kinds of positions, I think having that centeredness where you do know who you are, asking yourself the question, what is it that you value? And seeing people as your potential future friends. There's a conversation to be had, because people have common values. And that's what brings connectedness. That's what brings connectedness. And you find your allies around your common values, because contrary to popular belief, I think that good prevails in the hearts of the vast majority of people. Now, there would be those reconstructors of our history that would take us back to apartheid, that would take us back to segregation. But that is a minimalist minority, a very vocal minimalist minority that would have you think that they are in control of the minds of America, and that's not true. So building on from a point and a spirit of expectancy for positive and constructive change, a vision for positive and constructive change, expressing who you are, your brand unapologetically. As James Brown would say, I'm Black and I'm proud. And that simply is who I am. And just own that in your spirit, but also put everything between your ears for that knowledge base. As there was Malcolm X that said, education is the ticket to, I think he said, it's the ticket to our future. Let me get that quote right, because I need to honor it. Education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today. So in navigating what I'll call integrated spaces, it became critically important to me to learn everything that I could learn about the organizations and the job tasks that I was in. So anytime there was a workshop or a training, my little brown brain was present and learning. when it came time for promotions in navigating that space, they couldn't tell me that I was unqualified for any given position that I went after because I was overqualified for it and could multitask. So I'd say to you, recognize Malcolm's words and prepare today for your tomorrow. And understand it's going to be work. Understand there are going to be disappointments along the way. And that's where you have your friends, your family, your loved ones to share your pain. And then they will bolster you up and say, all right, you sat here and cried about this for the last 10 minutes. Enough of that. Now what you going to do about it? Those would be my mother's words. Now, what are you going to do about it? And we'd map out the steps for what we're going to do to fix this. So always be thinking in terms of what are you going to do to fix this? Because when bad things happen, they need to be corrected. They have to be corrected. That's just simply a part of the pendulum swing in life. I have this poem that's I'm not going to do, but it's called the For Me and For You. I'm gonna read just one little section. My people, all colors, march for equal justice to be unbound. While marches amass in many cities with numbers that astound, the reconstructors to vote, to allow millionaires to gloat, with the dollars will be unbound as they dare confound democracy like some clown. It is incumbent upon us to recognize what Sergeant Matruth said. America owes Black people a debt that they cannot repay, but they must make amends. Example, we're here at Johns Hopkins Black Student Union program, and Henrietta Lacks's blood was again used to help cure COVID, to help cure every disease. But her family has not gotten any remuneration. Johns Hopkins, it's past time to make amends. That's present and real.
Thank you very much. This allows me to ask my next question, which is about building allyship. You have all alluded to that a little bit. So how do we navigate and how do we take care of the misguided attempts at diversity response or racial support? How do we answer to that and how do we build allyship? Ms. Pamela Hill?
Yes.
And at this point, sorry, I would like to ask the attendees to feel free to ask questions in the Q&A. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Yes, I mean, I think this notion of allyship really builds on what all three of us have mentioned in terms of both recognizing our humanity and in that everyone else's. So we already are naturally allies on, you know, as Carl Sagan said, this pale blue marble, the onlyest home that we know of. So that's one way. It's just to go back to almost first principles and recognize that. Second, by extension, is recognizing how much we have in common. So Ms. Morris Hope would have likely seen this given how many countries she's visited. But I remember when I first started studying in China, you know, I was just a student, and there were a lot of tailors, street tailors that would make clothing for you and even have patterns material. And I would see cloth there that I thought sure was African, but it wasn't. It was from China, or sometimes they'd say, oh, this came from Indonesia or somewhere. And so it just reminded me again how much we have in common. So I think that that's how you build the allyship, is that you go back to reminding everyone what all we share. I've forgotten the percentages that science says in terms of, for instance, just genetically, even looking at primates. I think we share some 98% of the same genetic material as primates. So if that's what we share with primates, and we can see how fundamentally different, because that's how our minds work to look at the differences, then at a human level, we are just the same. I'll throw in one last example, just kind of a little whimsical or silly one, which is just, instead of imagining us as people, when folks can only see the differences, just imagine us as a big old gigantic basket full of puppies. So just in the same way that you're not like, ooh, the black puppies, I sure don't like those. You just like puppies, yay. So, kind of see us in that same, like there's just no difference. So.
Thank you. Ms. Morris-Hope?
Yes, and building on what Ms. Hill just said, I think it's important for us to interact with people so that we do get to know what we share in common. But we also have to have the open mind to do that, because if we go into a situation where we're different and we don't share anything, that's not going to happen. So somehow we have to establish the trust, establish the atmosphere where you can have these conversations and get to know and say, oh, wow, yeah, I think that way too, or I did that, but a lot of that has to do with education and people being willing to learn, first of all, how the brain works. The brain has a lot to do with how we react to things in people that are different. So, getting people to understand that, and that they have a choice, that they don't have to go with whatever their brain is telling them in their moment, because there is a split second where you have a choice in your behavior. But all of this needs to be taught to people, and people need to be willing to learn it, and maybe we can get somewhere. But so we have, learning what the commonalities are that we share, and also learning what being human is, how we are wired to react to difference, and what we can do about it, because we do have a choice as human beings as to which way we're going to go. Am I going to emphasize this difference, or am I going to recognize the things that we share? That is a choice that people have, and it's biological. It's physiological, whatever the correct word is. But we do have a way to do it, but we just have to want to do it, and we have to know that we can do it. And that is also very important.
Thank you. And let me turn to Ms. Nixon-Jordan.
Well, Sister Morris-Hope, when she talked about commonalities, one of the things that I think we really have to fight to hold on to is what I call the common. We cannot afford in our societies, in all societies, if we are going to learn how to recognize one another's humanity, we cannot afford to lose the common spaces, those spaces where we come together and touch one another as human beings. We can't afford to lose the mall because somebody put a bomb there. We can't afford to lose the public schools because somebody was threatening the funding, or because we're in the midst of a COVID virus. We can't afford to lose the public parks where we go to play and play together. We can't afford to lose the little league teams and the little league footballs and the girls basketball and the soccer and the volleyball, where we learn that rules exist in life, and we learn how to play the game and how to interact and how to show teamwork and how to engage one another. That's one thing, the common. But when you talked about misguided attempts at racial equity, I think that is where the voiceless have to be a part of the solution. Somebody once said that I can't solve the white people problem in America. I think we all have to be a part of the solution, because when you don't know me, you have no idea of my true capabilities. And when we dare to risk trusting, as Sister Hill said, risk trusting the acquaintance and the building of the relationships, that's when we start to come together as one, because we go to talking about common faith, common hopes, common dreams, the power of love. And we succeed as a nation by virtue of our diversities blending together to roll the wheel of justice and equity forward, not to retrench it and make it narrower. So and so I'd say to you, example, you're at Johns Hopkins as a student. I'd ask the question, is there an Afrocentric component to the teaching that is being delivered? If not, you might want to help that teacher put it in his or her lesson plan. You might bring the issue to the table, research and share. I found something that I'd like to ask for extra credit for, and I'd like to present it to the class because it presents a different thought process. And sometimes it's important to ask the question, excuse me, now was it your intent to make me feel less than, or to feel that you're discriminating against me? Have the conversation. Make it a conversation. Don't get angry about it, because people are people, and sometimes people truly just don't know. They don't know you. They don't know the essence of us as Black people. They don't know our history. And it's like a history class starting with a lesson on slavery. And I look up and I say, but my people didn't start from slavery. I come from kings and queens. There were 42 dynasties or 44 dynasties in place before we even got the 10 Commandments and the human Bible. And they had rules and laws. They had art and culture. You can't tell me that I was only a slave when I know that it was my people that brought the first universities to Europe in Spain. You can't tell me that my life started with slavery and I have no sense of class and art when I know that it was in Nigeria in the Nok culture, 500 BC, that they had some of the oldest terracotta sculptures. So my history is of art. It is of kingship. It is of queenship. It is of leadership. When Kwame Nkrumah says, no more colonialism for Nigeria. When Jomo Kenyatta says, no more colonialism for Kenya. You can't tell me that I am a slave and that my history began with slavery when I know better. So you get to bring it to the table yourselves. Find Asa Hilliard's work. Find Dr. Ben Connon's work. Read, study, come to know who you are. So nobody minimizes or defines the who you are, because you know your spiritual essence within you. And that does not have to be a negative kind of a fight. Sometimes you hear things and you let it flow over you, but you register it as people telling you who they are and what they know in this moment, because they too can learn. And then when the right time comes for that teachable moment, use the teachable moment. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much. My final question. In the face of adversity, how do you manage to self-care? And what do you do with your mental health? Do you have any insights about your own paths and any tips for our students and attendees? Thank you.
Right. Thanks very much. So yeah, I'm very glad actually that this notion of self-care and mental health is becoming part of the normal discourse, because we talk about other, and that's certainly one of those topics that always had been an other topic, as opposed to just part of the mainstream in asking about in a business setting. I'd say something else that kind of has struck me too about that question is that often it's asked to women. So back to Ms. Nixon Jordan, who mentioned being courageous in how you bring up conversations with professors in order to help them better tackle a topic more comprehensively. For us, as part of the discourse, to make this question about self-care and mental health a question that gets asked when it's a universally or heavily a male panel. But that said, I'm very family focused, so I take a lot of enjoyment out of my family. We have a family reunion, which is something very typical of Black Americans. I feel like I've been suffering with this COVID and not being able to do the reunions. This will be our 42nd one coming up in August. So that's one way that I recharge and stay connected. And then I'd say you asked any advice to SAIS students. So I guess one would just be to remember that you are a series of ands. So in other words, don't just find yourself only focusing on the one facet of you that has to do with what you're studying at SAIS. And so you become very narrow in your perspective and perhaps somewhat exhausted. Tap into the other components, the other facets of that diamond that you are, and find enjoyment and meaningfulness there.
Thank you. Ms. Morris-Hope?
Yes, thank you. I believe that to focus on self-care starts with, again, knowing who you are and being very strong in who you are, and knowing your identity. And with that comes resilience. I think we have to build up resilience to what is happening to us. And I think to do that, knowing your life purpose, knowing why you're here and why you're doing what you're doing, having a vision for where you're going, I think gets us through a lot. It has helped me to get through several different challenges that I have been experiencing. And so I think, as we said, keep your eye on the prize. And just know your purpose, know why you're here, know who you are and what you're trying to get to. And in that process, also being sure that you take time for yourself. And the quiet time, the meditation and so forth also helps. Also being connected to family. And unfortunately, the pandemic has kept us from being connected in person, but if you can do it by Zoom for as long as we can, I hope this doesn't last much longer. But being in touch with your family, being in touch with your network, all of those things are very, very important. So, but starting with self and being sure of your purpose, keeping your eye on that purpose, and then bringing in your network, your family, and so forth, and taking the time. Take a quiet walk, meditate, whatever. All of those things are important.
Thank you. Ms. Nixon Jordan?
Self-care. Now, as a victim of a stroke in 2013, I wasn't talking, I wasn't walking, and this stroke happened literally in a meeting at work. And I thoroughly stressed out over someone questioning the veracity of something that I had said. And it was a person that I didn't really respect highly, because 2 days before they had me in a meeting with my boss trying to explain to me how I was going to tell an untruth in some report that I was supposed to be doing. And I was sitting there explaining to them that I was having no part of that. And then to have had that stroke and know that when you're laying in that hospital and have that thought as, well, Lord, if this is it, I guess I'm ready to go. And I just proceeded to cross my arms across my chest and um, waited for them to do all the doing that they did. And the doctor came back, said, you had a stroke and we're going to keep you. And spending time at Washington National Hospital. And one day I set up, it was the third day in the hospital. I cried. I cried about, oh, this stroke, good God of mercy, this is awful. Then I thought about that thing. I said, all right, you can spend more than 3 minutes here feeling sorry for yourself and crying. So God got you here. You still here. You are alive. You are alive for a purpose. So I guess you're going to be busy doing whatever these folks tell you to do to help you get well. And thanks to Washington Hospital, a great medical team. And when the stroke doctor said to me after a year, you know, often, Miss Nixon, after a year, patients have probably accomplished the most recovery that they're going to have. And I looked at him and said, well, that's not good enough. So what else are we going to do? And we worked through persevering some more, but daring to trust that you are here for purpose and with purpose. And no matter what the challenge is that folks put in front of you, it's going to be all right. My self-care at that time was through yoga, through trying to talk, having friends that came over to make me talk, to make me throw cards all over the table while I'm learning to get my fingers and hands back in gear. But we played cards and we talked, and they let me throw cards all over everywhere and made me shuffle when it was my turn. Whether the cards went everywhere or not, they grab them back together, do it again. And my stress relief was poetry. Politics, I learned that I had to avoid because that was one of my trigger points. Because fairness, I learned that fairness and justice and equity issues are things that I have a passion and a value set about. And knowing that, I used my poetry to relieve my stress when there was issues that I knew needed to be addressed, but I wasn't in a position to do it. And my speech was exceptionally slurred. And even when I joined the coalition, the ladies talk now about, Deborah, you are a different person now than the one that we met when you came into this chapter. You were walking on a walking cane, and I mean, you were really slurring your words. It took you a long time to talk, but you got out what you wanted to say. So I'd say to you, my self-care is family. My self-care is friends. My self-care is this wonderful man that I married a year ago, Mr. Clyde Jordan, who's going to be angry at me for putting him on camera. But it's about life is about relationships, and in everything that I think I've engaged in, whether it was doing the yoga, whether it was physical therapy, I'm talking to somebody or trying to. Who are you? Because sometimes they were slurring worse or as bad as I was, but we kept talking because the speech therapist said the only way you get this back is by talking. And she actually used my poetry to help me get my speech rhythm back. So I'm in her office. No, you got to read this to me, because you get the rhythm when you're doing your poetry. And writing, I just kept trying to write until it got to a point that it was legible. So I say to you, persevere, and know, no matter the challenge, if you're still standing and got breath in your body, you can do something about it, whatever the issue is. And dare to trust God that He has empowered you with everything you need to be successful in life. And for me, the ocean and the water are my nirvana. So that, and my friends and family, hey, nothing like it. We have in our 43rd, prayerfully, it won't be virtually. And we will be doing it in Myrtle Beach this summer. Lord, say the same.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you. We hope you feel better. We hope you stay safe and take care of yourselves. And now I'll hand over the mic to Chloe Richardson.
Yes, that was a phenomenal panel. I want to thank everyone for spending their evening with us and having this very timely and much needed conversation. If you're only able to stay for one part of the session or for both, we have them recorded, and they will be put on YouTube in 3 days. Just reach out to us at saisbsu@gmail.com if you want that recording, and we'd be happy to send that over to you. If you'd like to connect with any of the speakers you've heard with today or have questions that you didn't put in the chat, just be sure to email us again at saisbsu@gmail, and we'll have that forwarded to the panelists. I just want to thank everyone again who helped make this possible, from faculty and staff, the events team at SAIS, IT, and of course, all of our speakers and panelists. I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Ms. Richardson?
Yes.
Would you allow me just to say a thank you? Because I think this discussion today and the questions that you all posed are so relevant. And I just want to thank you all. Thank Laura Shaw for inviting me to be on this panel, and thank Ms. Hill and Ms. Morris Hope. I mean, for just being who you are. And I want to thank you young people, because you're the future, and you're like that Sankofa. You looking back to us to ask some questions so that you can move forward in bringing our culture and our history and your excellence to the world. So we thank you all for bringing that excellence.
Thank you so much. That's too kind. We will definitely have another one of these sessions hopefully soon, and we'll continue to keep celebrating Black History Month. We have some other events coming up throughout the rest of the month, so you can always feel free to look us up on our social media. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very, very much.